What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Ryan Kyle Show. I am your host, Ryan, here with my co-host, Kyle. Today, we talk Kawhi Leonard, if it hasn't already been talked about enough. Kawhi Leonard has been talked about in lots of trade possibilities and free agent moves next season. There's still a possibility that he could stay with the San Antonio Spurs. He does have a $220 million option, Supermax, if he does decide to resign. That probably won't happen. If he gets traded to a team this year, re-signing would only get him about $100 million, so he'd miss out on about $100 million. If he does not re-sign this year and he decides to wait until next year, he could sign for up to $150 million for the team he signs with next year. So there are a lot of options. The most recent ones we're going to discuss today are going to be the rumor that the Raptors could be trying to target Kawhi, using DeMar DeRozan as kind of bait. And the most recent one that the Portland Trailblazers are calling San Antonio Spurs interested on what they could do. So, to start off, Kyle, what is your opinion on Kawhi Leonard to the Toronto Raptors? Do you think DeMar DeRozan and some young picks and some young players is a good choice? Do you think it's a bad decision because it's only going to be a one-year rental because he may not go to LA? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if we look at the precedent set last year by Paul George, I kind of like the idea of the renting of these big-name players on the 1 year. If you feel confident in the fact that you can convince the player to stay. I mean, it's a risk. But at the end of the day, even if you don't get the player to stay, you still get Kawhi Leonard for a year.
Yeah, I understand that, but with Paul George, I think it's different. And the way I say it is that you're going to a world-class organization. You're going to an organization who's paying the players, doesn't care about going into the luxury tax. You're talking about a team that has great management with Sam Presti as the GM. He is a phenomenal GM, done a great job for them for multiple years. It's a great organization with great staff that does a great job in taking care of the players. The fans are very loyal. Then you go up to Toronto, and it looks like it's like, oh, they do good here, spotty work there, not as good an organization in my mind. I just don't know, and it's Toronto. It's freezing in there. Like, oh, I want to go to LA. I'm Kawhi Leonard. Now I want to go to Toronto. I'm going to stay here in the freezing cold instead of going to sunny, nice beaches, LA.
This is why I don't like the Kawhi Leonard debacle that's going on this offseason, because to me it seems like more of a life choice for Kawhi.
And it was the same thing with LeBron, too.
But they're in different stages of their career. Kawhi should be making the best decision for basketball.
But he already got his chip. What does he need to make the decision? He's a finals MVP. What does he need to make it for the basketball decision?
I just don't understand why, if anything, he should be making a money decision. Like, Kawhi, to me, is making all these very strange decisions. And if you're asking me, I think a lot of it's the influence of his inner circle.
Yeah, there's
a lot of shadowy actors and weird things going on. And I don't think Kawhi is necessarily thinking all that clearly or making the best decision for himself.
Well, I will say this. The money is a huge factor. But at a certain point, you got to wonder. They did this whole thing with the Supermax contract and the collective bargaining agreement through the NBA, where it was all designed to try and keep the players with the teams they got drafted by and trying to keep the players with the teams that are small market teams. It actually had the opposite effect in my mind because it made the money so ridiculous that it's almost like, well, I'm making $150 million versus $220 million or $200 million. What's $50 million worth me living in San Antonio where I'm not having fun playing basketball, which he came out and said. He doesn't want to be in San Antonio anymore. So if it's like, I want to go in LA or San Antonio, it's like a nice house in LA, nice house in Toronto. Which one sounds better for $50 million?
I'd take $50 million to live just about anywhere in the United States.
You say that, but once you're making $150 million, it's like, you're still making $150 million. $50 million to get to choose where you want to live on a long-term contract?
$50 million is a lot of money.
It is.
I would take $50 million.
He'll make more endorsements in LA than he would in Toronto.
Maybe.
I think so. Media endorsements. I mean, he's gonna get. Jordan is that all based down there, and There's a good chance he could get a Jordan deal if he goes down there. And
I don't think
that big Jordan deal, like freaking what Derrick Rose got with Adidas at $7 million range.
I don't think the market in LA is as pronounced as everyone seems to think it is. I think maybe for smaller players who don't have large media presence, but when you're talking about the largest players, they've got such great exposure and such great, teams around them. Now, Kawhi doesn't really have much of a team around him as far as agents and like PR people and things like that.
I don't know.
But he still has the media presence that everyone knows who Kawhi is.
That's true, but that only happened like last year.
Yeah.
Like, he was off the radar for years because he came from the small market. If he would have been in L.A. and blossomed into a superstar in L.A., you better bet there would have been way more attention. He would have been getting way more interviews, way more endorsements, way more commercials, everything.
But at this point, the money he can make from endorsements in San Antonio versus L.A. or L.A. versus Toronto, I don't think is that large a gap. Maybe you get a little bit of a boost from being in L.A. But I don't think it's that large a gap for those big superstars who are going to draw contracts and endorsements from anyone who wants to do business with them.
Well, I think Rich Paul, LeBron James' agent, and also Ben Simmons' agent, coincidentally, made the best statement of the offseason towards what happened with LeBron. He is a transcendent media talent. He's going to get a lot of cover. He's going to get a lot of attention, no matter where he was. Like, the media was talking about LeBron James nonstop in Cleveland, okay, in Miami. Like, he's going to get the attention no matter where he is. He's going to make the brand come to him no matter where he is. I understand that point. That being said, lifestyle for these guys is a huge factor, I think. I think now that there's so much money out there, like, everyone's saying, oh, just grab your money. But now that people are making $200 million, it's like, what is $50 million worth compared to like where you want to live? Like
$50 million is still a large.
It is a lot of money. No, don't get me wrong. Like these guys, if they was between living in an area that you kind of like or you don't like at all, or like kind of like and you like a little bit better, then obviously you're gonna do the one that gets you $50 million more. But this is his home. This is where he's from. It's nice weather. He likes it. I mean, San Antonio. Someone who went and lived in San Antonio for a small period or was in San Antonio for a short period of time. Spent the summer in San Antonio. It is not good weather. I hated San Antonio's weather. Now, that's just my opinion, but I'm sure there are other people who are on that team who have the same
let me ask you, because we don't make the type of money these guys make, so obviously we would take $50 million to live anywhere.
Yeah, $50 million to us could set us up for life.
Right. But let's say, would you take $50,000 to move to San Antonio?
Like right now?
Yeah. Because I would. You gave me $50,000 cash right now, I would move just about anywhere in the country you wanted me to move.
You give me $100 right now, and you can punch me in the face as hard as you want. I don't think that's saying a whole lot. I'm pretty poor.
I'm just
saying, but these guys, no, I'm
just saying.
It's different with people who don't have the money. We think it's all, to us, it's all astronomical numbers.
Well, 50,000 is, I think, to us, pretty relevant as to what 50 million to these guys is.
Yeah, but it's like, if I'm making, if you told me right now, I can make 200,000 or 150,000, but I get to choose where I live, I'd rather take the 150 and choose where I live. Yeah, the 50,000 is awesome, but if I'm stuck there for 5 years, they're like 5 years in San Antonio, Texas.
For $50,000?
5 years in San Antonio, Texas, I'd rather pick where I want to live for 150. That's my opinion, and that's even with a smaller margin. These guys are talking millions. It's like, they're at the point where it's like, they're going to get so rich it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, but it's not about them. You know, when you're talking about the money, when you're talking about that much money, at a certain point, it's a legacy. So these guys that are making large amounts of money, there's a reason that you don't see them often throw away money the way Kawhi is. That's why this is a rare story.
Paul George threw away a lot of money.
Right, but it's rare. Most guys don't throw away large chunks of money, and the reason most guys don't is because they realize that the money's not just about them and their lifetime. It's about their kids and their future. So a lot of these people, they want that $50 million because, okay, maybe Kawhi will never spend that $50 million by the time he dies, but his kids will want that money.
Yeah,
his kids are sure would love to have that $50 million more in the estate.
I will say this. Would you rather... I think that it's a big part of that is still... Like, where do you want to live and raise your kids? Where do you want your kids to be? LeBron, biggest factor in his decision was his family. And where it was his family was a big decision on this last one of his career. And that's why he went to LA, because that's where he wanted his family. That's where his family was happy. It's where he had 2 homes there. He was happy. He wanted to be there. why did Paul George go from the Indiana Pacers? Why didn't he accept their offer for an extension? Why did he decide to say, "Hey, I'm not going to be here next year"?
Because he was tired of losing to LeBron.
That's part of it, but I 100% believe it's because it's like if you have a chance to live where you want, and you're making such astronomical numbers, it doesn't even matter at this point.
He didn't even end up going to where he wanted to go, though.
Yeah, but I also think that going back to the other point, he's not really he wanted to go to LA because it's lifestyle, and also because I think he thought he could bring a good talent around it. But I think he wanted there for like a basketball decision too. But then he came to a situation that was such a good choice and such a good fit for his basketball situation and where he is in his career.
Right.
Paul George isn't at the final stretch of his career.
No.
He's still in his prime. The next contract Paul George gets is the contract where he'll have to make that lifestyle decision.
Right, and that's why I think what Kawhi is doing is making a mistake. Because he's not doing like what Paul George did. Paul George left a situation where he wasn't in a good basketball situation. The only advantage in staying in Indiana would have been the money. He still did an unpopular thing in leaving that money to go somewhere else. He wanted to make a lifestyle change, much like Kawhi wants to make right now. But he ended up in a good basketball situation and made the smart choice to say,
okay,
this is a better place for me to win than going to LA.
Let me just say this then. If that's the case, if it's a basketball decision, I still think LA is the better choice for him. I still think it's better to go play with LeBron and all the talent that will go and filter into LA. Once LeBron and Kawhi meet up, you better bet every top free agent veteran.
If they
did, every top free agent veteran will hoard to them. Just look at what happened this year. Lance Stephenson was a good player. Rondo was a facilitator for that Pelicans offense, and just like ran away from a contract to go join LA and LeBron. JaVale McGee left the Warriors to go join LeBron at the same contract. Why? Because there's an appeal to not only join LeBron, but to being a Laker in LA with LeBron.
Right. And I
don't know why he would stay in San Antonio as a basketball decision.
Well, we can debate whether or not San Antonio, or not San Antonio, but whether or not OKC or LA gives Paul George a better chance to win a championship. But I think that he truly believes, whether or not what we think is as in our analysis of it, I think Paul George truly believes and was convinced by people around him, people in that organization, Russell Westbrook and the like. I think he was truly convinced and he truly believes that OKC gives him the best chance to win.
Yeah.
I think he made a basketball decision. Because I think if he thought LA gave him the best chance to win, and that's the place he wants lifestyle-wise, he would have easily chose LA. The fact that he chose OKC tells me that he truly believes that that's the best chance to win.
I think his decision to join OKC is more about OKC as an organization than it is about his decision to be the best in basketball. Like, okay, I understand. Westbrook's an MVP. I understand that. They had a lot. They're very cap-strapped. I understand that. Like, even if you just say LeBron, Westbrook are even on how much they give you, which they're not. But even if you just said that, I think organizational-wise, he was impressed. He was so happy in OKC with the organization. Like, there were stories out of OKC that Kevin Durant told Paul George that he should want to go to OKC because he said when he's in OKC they had like private chefs and they had the greatest chefs and they had the greatest assistants and helpers and the training staff was so good and the organization from top to bottom, from ownership, the guys who were willing to go $300 million over the cap, all the way down to the trainer and the guys who's mopping the floor are just so high quality with such good fans in a city that really wants a team that there was no reason to leave. They treat you like a god there in OKC. It gives you a good chance to win because you've got a solid core around you and Westbrook, and you got an MVP as your corner. Like he said late last year, that checks all the boxes. It's a great organization who's really behind the players. Westbrook's an MVP, so you got MVP level talent on your roster. You got good players around you. It's like it checks all the boxes. So I think he thought this year that there was just no reason to leave. Like, wait, I'm going to leave this great situation just because I want to go to LA and go into an uncertain situation. I think that was the biggest reason he decided not to leave. I think it's different because Kawhi, because he knows he's going into a good situation. It's not like he's like, oh, I'm leaving and I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm going to stay. Well,
depending on where he goes. Now, if we're talking about that move to Toronto,
I don't think it's a better situation, though.
You don't think that's a better situation?
No, because in the deal, as discussed, what would have to happen? There's been a lot of hypotheticals on what the deal would, like simulations of what would have to happen, but most likely what would have to happen is it would be DeMar DeRozan because his contract's longer and he has more value in trade than Kyle Lowry does.
Right.
So it'd be DeMar DeRozan, a pick or two, and young players. So you're giving up. You have a very deep team on Toronto, given. They have a very young, deep team as their roster and the backups, right? But you have to give up multiple of those guys.
Right.
Picks, which is your future, and your best player on that team, just to get a year rental with Kawhi Leonard, to where Kawhi would be there for a year, but it's so different. It's just like...
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Is
I don't think it's as good as an organization. I don't think he has as much talent. Like, your second best player is Kyle Lowry, whereas you can go to LA, which is way better weather than Toronto, and then you can go play with LeBron,
but
the best in the world.
Kawhi doesn't get the choice until he's a free agent.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about trades, and that's what I'm saying, is that I don't think Toronto is a good situation for Kawhi. I don't think Kawhi wants to go to Toronto.
No, I agree. I don't think he wants to go to
But
Toronto.
when we're talking about a trade, he doesn't really get a decision.
No, but it's more of a decision for Toronto. Like, you want to give up your depth, give up some of your future, and give up your current talent just to get a one-year rental of probably the third best player in the world when healthy, or maybe the fourth, top five at least,
and
when he's healthy.
And that's the point I was trying to make at the top, was that it's only a good idea to do these rentals if you really think that you can convince the player to stay with you long term.
That was a huge... I've been hearing a lot of these things called, like, their gamble teams that are happening right now. It happened with OKC. They were desperate. They knew that there wasn't enough talent around Westbrook to even be successful. They were desperate to make a big splash. So they went and got Carmelo, and they went and got Paul George.
And it was a risk.
And you know what? It paid off because you got Paul George on a long-term deal. Now you can build a real nucleus around that team.
And they proved a lot of people wrong, because I was one of those people that thought for sure when Paul George was traded there's no chance he stays. This is a one-year rental and he's gone.
No, I agree. And
a lot of people thought that.
No, I 100% agree. I don't have that same feeling. There was this feeling I got towards free agency. And really towards like the mid part of the year, you're hearing these more reports about how happy he is in OKC.
He's getting comfortable.
He's friends with Westbrook. And then you start hearing there's a better chance that they're gonna have a good chance.
But my point is, you don't really know until you know.
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same with Toronto. I'm sorry, but like, you don't have the MVP around you. You don't have the organization.
But there's a lot less
risk.
There's a lot less risk for Toronto, because if you think about Toronto, and if you're gonna give up DeRozan anyway, right? And then you get Kawhi. Let's say you lose out on this bet, and you only get Kawhi for the 1 year.
You lost DeRozan.
I know.
And your young talent.
But if you're at that point anyway, you're looking at a rebuild in Toronto anyway. You're going to start shuffling around and either retooling or rebuilding.
Well,
they're getting to that point.
That's where they are right now.
Yeah, they're getting to that point anyway. With DeRozan and Lowry, that duo isn't going to last much longer, and they've proven that they can't make that duo a championship duo. So they're at a point now that they're thinking about retool or rebuild anyway. I
understand.
So take the rental. If it doesn't work out and you lose Kawhi, then you just go complete rebuild mode.
That's why they're the gamble team of this free agencies, because they don't have a whole lot to lose at this point. Because
and that's what I'm saying.
People were talking about them blowing up the team earlier.
Right.
I honestly think, I've said this multiple times, I think the best thing, I 100% believe they need to mix it up. I think they're in a stalemate. I think that the combo doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
If the culture there is a losing culture.
Getting Kawhi there would be a good mix-up.
I think it would. But I don't think it would last. I don't think it would be a good decision. I think the best thing they could do is make a deal with Minnesota, who is desperate to add some more talent around Jimmy Butler, who's afraid Jimmy Butler's going to go, because he probably will go, because he's not happy there and he doesn't want to be in Minnesota. He doesn't like the mindset, doesn't like the tough mentality of the players. He thinks all the guys in Minnesota are weak. I will say this, bring in Andrew Wiggins, who's on a long-term contract. He's expensive, I understand. He's Canadian-born. You bring him back to Toronto. Huge publicity having a Canadian-born being one of the stars of the Toronto squad of the future. He's young. He makes that team younger. So that's a way to retool, because you don't have to just blow it up, because Andrew Wiggins is only in his early 20s. So he can still have a long, productive career in Toronto. So you get DeRozan, or I would prefer Lowry. I think a better
Yeah,
deal
in that
is to get rid of
situation, Lowry would make more sense.
You give him Lowry and a few picks. That way you don't have to give up DeRozan. Then you have DeRozan. Van Vliet runs the point. 6th Man of the Year candidate runs the point. And then you have Wiggins be the number 2 option on that team. And I think he would flourish being a number 2 option because I think he kind of regressed last year because he became like the 3rd option on that team. And I don't think he's good at 3rd option. I think he will be more productive as a 1 or 2 option in a team. And I think that would be the best retooling they could do. Now, I don't know why that hasn't happened yet, honestly. I think the big reason why is because Toronto thinks they have higher aspirations. I think they may be doubting Wiggins a little bit. But
I don't know if Toronto makes a move this year, and the reason I say that is I think that
they're
if you're Toronto, you think we're coming off our best season as far as win-loss in the organization. You know, we're a good team. And LeBron is no longer in the East. And that has been the roadblock.
But
if I'm Toronto, I say at least take a shot this year with what you have and see if you can prove to yourself and to everyone else that it was just LeBron in the East as our roadblock.
Okay.
They may get to a championship with what they have this year.
I fired Dwayne Casey because I didn't like the culture that had been created, losing and being kind of punked by LeBron.
Yeah, that's
Even
fair.
if you say it's 100% LeBron, he still lost to the Cavaliers team with LeBron. They were not a good team. Indiana took them to the 7-game series. So what does that say about the Raptors, who could not get them even 1 game? They got swept. So
but I don't think that says as much as a team, and it could be the mental block.
Oh, okay, that's a huge part of it. I understand that. But even if it isn't, even if you have Toronto without LeBron, I don't think they have enough to get past Boston. I don't think they have enough to get past the Philadelphia 76ers.
There's a lot of ifs with Boston. 76ers, it depends on how they develop. I like Toronto as one of the top challengers in the East next year, just as well as it.
I think the East has a lot of up-and-coming teams. I don't think Toronto. I think Toronto has the wrong timeline. I think Toronto is on the decline. I think they're only going to get worse as a team from here on out. And then say, oh, they had the best season. It's like, true. But I think they had the worst season in the playoffs that they've ever had. So what that tells me is that they're on the decline. They need to either retool and reshuffle. They got the youth to make it a quick rebuild. They got a lot of youth on that roster.
Yeah.
I think Kawhi is a bad move because I think you lose a lot of assets and you don't really get a whole lot unless you get him to re-sign. And they're pretty desperate because they're going to need to rebuild soon. So they're getting pretty desperate to where they may want to make the gamble, but it's a big gamble. It's like they're putting like 80% of the pot.
Yeah.
To try and get winning
I don't know if
ticket.
If I want Kawhi, if I'm just talking about a 1-year rental, I don't know if I want to give up DeRozan necessarily, or I'd rather give up Lowry.
Well,
but
Lowry
I don't
doesn't
think
have
that
as
the
much value.
Spurs.
He is not near
Right,
as much
the
value.
Spurs won't take that unless they give up a ton of young assets and picks.
I will say this. I think I 100% don't think he'll resign. And I've said this. We've said this before, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a gamble that they may make. I don't think it's a good one because unlike Paul George, I don't feel like he's not playing against with a Westbrook and all those guys. I think he just has so many more ifs with Toronto, and it's not even close to this kind of situation in which you'd like. Another team that has been discussed in the rumors just recently is the Portland Trailblazers, who have been heard. There have been reports that they've been making some calls to the San Antonio Spurs to try and see what they could offer. And I don't know what they would offer. I don't know what the exact offer would detail, what the details of it would be. I'm not sure even if I even like Kawhi going to the Trailblazers. Like, I think the only deal that would make sense for me, that would make the Trailblazers a better team, would be if they gave up McCollum, some role players, and then some picks. Because I think Kawhi is a huge upgrade from McCollum.
McCollum makes the most sense going to the Spurs, from the Spurs side of it. And that also makes the most sense
They would want Lillard.
Right.
But
I don't know if they would.
Lillard.
I don't know if they would because I don't think Lillard fits the system as well.
I don't think it matters. I think they just want the pure talent. Lillard's a much better player than McCollum is. I think they would ask Lillard, and then I don't know.
I think they would
get scared that Lillard.
I think they would be happy with McCollum if they felt like they could get enough picks and other young pieces. I think that they would go for that, but they'd have to be pretty certain that Kawhi's gone.
And if I'm the Spurs, I don't even know if that's the best offer. Because the best offer they're getting right now is still from the Lakers.
Right.
They just don't want to give it to the Lakers. I will say this, though.
There's a possibility, too, that the Lakers, some of these pieces that they've acquired aren't necessarily pieces for next year. Like, we're talking about guys that they've picked up, like they picked up Rondo and they picked up Stevenson and JaVale McGee. Those could potentially be just pieces for later down the road.
Soon. The only time they could trade those guys is at the deadline. This is the first time I think they would have a real chance of trading them. I think they have to do like 30 days before they can trade. So, I mean,
I'm just saying there's
a
potential that there's a conversation going on behind closed doors in that respect that we don't know about.
I think the moves with all the other guys was more of a thing to try and get the ball out of LeBron's hand because he's getting older. He wants to play through the post more. He doesn't want to be so ball dominant. I think that's a big reason why they brought those guys in, and they're great fighters. I think if I'm the Portland Trailblazers, what I want to do in this situation is I want to not get rid of McCollum and Lillard. I hate this whole thing that's been coming down like, oh, we didn't win this year with McCollum and Lillard. We didn't win this year with Kyle Lowry and DeRozan. Blow it up. Now, I do think Raptors need to retool because I think they've had too many years of just being mediocre. But with the Lillard-McCollum, I 100% believe they don't need to blow it up. I think they're a great backcourt. I think they're one of the better backcourts in the league, really underrated. I think what they need to do is add another talent. And I think that's hard because they have such cap straps because they were idiots in 2016 and gave out all this money to bad players like Miles Leonard. I think what they need to do is offer a trade package of whatever they can to go get Kevin Love to make him the third piece of a good trio in Portland.
I like that.
He's from Washington, Kevin Love. Lived in Oregon for a while. So, I mean, he has a background in that area, so I think you could get him to re-sign next year long term. I think he's a great fit for those two. He has another scoring option. He's a great rebounder, which they need. I think he gives them that third option that's a better fit than going after Leonard. I think I don't know. I think you give up too much to go after Leonard. I don't think they actually get any better. I think if you add a third piece to the team, let me rephrase that. I think them getting Leonard would make them better if they gave up McCollum. I don't think they're good enough to really compete. I think them adding Love makes them good enough to be a top contender in the West moving forward. Because I think they have enough depth there too.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the idea of adding Love rather than going for Leonard and then blowing up what you have. I don't know if they're a better team even if it's McCollum that goes and you get Leonard. Because, on paper that's a better team, having Lillard and Kawhi Leonard. But McCollum and Lillard play together so well, and they have a history together. When you swap someone out and bring someone else in, you have to start from scratch as far as chemistry is concerned. And so, it's a much more talented on paper team, but I don't know if that's necessarily better. I think they probably don't win as many games, or maybe a few more games, maybe not.
That's why I said I think the Love trade would be much better for chemistry.
Yeah, I think that's much better.
But I will say this, though. It all depends. You never know. Because it could end up being like Miami, how it takes a year and then you end up being great and end up winning 2 titles out of 4 years. Or it could end up being like the OKC. Everyone thought OKC on paper last year was one of the top teams in the league. They said, they can compete with the Warriors. They're going to be right there with the Rockets and the Warriors. Right. One of the best teams. And look what happened. First round out because the chemistry didn't fit.
And if we're talking about a Kawhi trade, I don't see Portland being any more likely to retain Kawhi Leonard than Toronto. I think both those teams have an equal likeliness to re-sign him, being near zero. So
I think they're probably about the same level of re-signability.
So I don't see how that's any better for them as an organization because they're not in as much of a retool or rebuild situation as Toronto is.
Yeah, and I will say this about the Trailblazers. They were first round out too, but adding Kawhi, and getting rid of McCollum, I'm not sure that's enough. Like going back to the trade, the brass tacks of it, I don't know if McCollum and some of the role players they have and some picks is enough. I think you could get a better deal from Toronto.
Yeah.
I think you could get a better deal from the Lakers. I think you could get a better deal from the Clippers if they found a third party.
I think there's some
to
other
facilitate
teams out
trade.
there that could do some stuff.
Yeah, and I think
to
there's a
move
dark
things
horse
around.
somewhere in the league that has a deal waiting that could be a really good deal that we don't even know about until it happens.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's also a lot of things changing with Kawhi Leonard, but we will keep you guys up to date on everything that's happening. Just watch the next episode of the Ryan Kai Show if you want to check us out. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.